Hello, BookTube. Welcome back to my channel. I am Carrie, if you're watching my channel for the first time, and I'm joined today by one of my very best friends, Allison.
Hello. So good to see you, Carrie.
Oh, so good to see you. Allison has moved a little bit further away from me now, and so, I miss her already. So I feel like we have to do this more often.
We definitely have to do this way more often.
So, just to let you guys know what books we're going to be talking about today, we are actually in a real life book club called the Well Read, Badly Behaved Book Club. And it's a really cool group of um, women, lots of different ages, lots of different reading tastes, and we pick a different restaurant or place to meet every month, and we read different books. Most of the books we've read, though, I feel like are thrillers. They are kind of those fast-paced sort of books. And today we're going to talk about two. The first one is No Exit by Taylor Adams, and the second one is The Lying Game by Ruth Ware. And actually, Allison is the one who suggested The Lying Game. So I guess tell us kind of what drew you to this book, why you recommended it.
I think I was scrolling through Instagram and it like popped up and then I was like, what is this? It has an interesting cover. Let me go research it. And the plot, yes. I love I'm a sucker for graphics and art. And so I really liked the cover and I was like, what? And Reese Witherspoon's book club usually has some pretty good picks. And
Yes.
when I read the plot, I said, this seems interesting. Like I wanted something twisty and turny, like that I would not be able to, figure out until the very end. And I think that accomplished it for me.
Nice, very good. And I have read Ruth Ware before. That's hard to say, Ruth Ware. I've read her before, and I don't know. I have kind of mixed results on her, but I did like this one. I feel like she's one of those authors that I'm going to continue to read, but I never know kind of if it's going to be a winner or not for me. But I feel like this one was solid. This one was a good pick.
Yeah,
And
I was very pleased.
Yeah, and I think one of our other book club members, Megan, suggested No Exit, and I had wanted to read No Exit for a really long time. I'd seen a lot of good reviews all over BookTube, and I don't have either Hulu or Netflix, but I know that it was made into a movie. And once we get to that point, Allison, I'll ask you to kind of speak on that because you watched it, so we didn't have
to. I did.
So not really recommend. So just want to say, hey, I do see a couple people are watching, and we have Stephen Corey in the chat. Good to see you as always, Stephen. Your take, what is the big differences between a thriller and a horror story? Do you have any thoughts on that, Allie?
That's a really good question. Thriller for me is I feel like I'm constantly on the edge of my seat what's coming next, whereas horror is more jarring to my imagination. Like I'm trying to describe what I'm trying to say how like what's in my
more
head.
Graphic.
More graphic. Like yeah, very graphic.
Yeah, I agree with that. To me, when I think of a thriller, I do tend to think of a psychological thriller. So there is, typically a lot of lying or secrets, and it does kind of keep you on the edge of your seat, kind of keep you guessing, but it's not necessarily that kind of visceral, immediate fear that I think horror kind of does, where you're, you're seeing a bit more of the graphic scenes, a bit more blood and guts. I mean, for lack of better words, Stephen. Yes. That's kind of what I tend to see in horror.
there were a couple scenes in No Exit that I thought were kind of grotesque.
Yeah, now No Exit, I would consider No Exit a little bit more of a horror. I would say that's like a horror thriller.
Yeah.
And just overall, I guess, what were your impressions of No Exit?
At first, I was like, "Where is this going? It's all
Yeah.
happening in one day. Where? How can you write that many pages about one day?" And like at first, I was like, "How?" Like I thought they were all complete strangers. Turns out, not the case. So it definitely kept me guessing. And I did really enjoy it much more than the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, No Exit was really great. I don't know. I like the setting. Like to me, the setting of No Exit really made it. So for those of you who haven't heard of No Exit, essentially we have a young girl named Darby. She's in college. She's an art student, and she is driving home. I think she's in Utah, right? Is that correct?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay. Um, she's driving home to see her mother who is dying of cancer, and there is this, just wild snowstorm blizzard happening, and she gets stuck at a rest stop, this kind of desolate rest stop. And there are 4 other people in this rest stop. And yeah, that to me, just the scene of the rest stop and having the entire book pretty much, take place at that rest stop. It sounds like it would be boring, but to me,
Right.
when you have a book that is set in like one area like that, like a desolate, area, this rest stop, this lonely, post on the road, like it makes it very claustrophobic. It makes it even more scary to me,
Yes.
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the fact there's no way of communicating at all
Yeah.
with anyone.
Yeah. Hello, Cool Gamer. Good to see you. Just curious, have you read No Exit by Taylor Adams? Just curious, just throwing that out there. Yeah, the setting was really cool, and I think you can speak more to the character of Darby because she is an art student, and of course you are an artist. Actually, everybody can see it right there in your handle. But you're an artist, and so what did you think about the incorporation of Darby's art background kind of into her character and who she was?
I really liked her character. She was very interesting, and I love that they incorporated this aspect that she did all these gravestone rubbings, because a lot of people think that's really bizarre and strange, but me as an artist, I don't think so at all.
Yeah.
So I really do think she had a great character, and I do think her character was challenged outside of her comfort zone in that book.
Yeah. I didn't really think the gravestone rubbings was weird either because as a history buff,
Right?
I like, old cemeteries, and where we live, one of the former governors of Virginia is buried in one of our local cemeteries. Like I've been out there to see the headstone, like, so that really didn't strike me as super odd, but I think her kind of obsession with it, because she did have like gravestone rubbings like all over her dorm room
And they were
wall.
all rolled up in her car.
Yeah, in her car.
Yeah.
One thing that struck me about that is that she seems depressed. She does seem depressed. She does seem a bit adrift. She's kind of lost. She kind of hasn't really figured out who she is yet, I think. And I think that's reflected in the fact that she doesn't have a great relationship with her mother.
Absolutely.
But I think sometimes with people who are, depressed or maybe have a little bit of an obsession with death and dying and things like that, when they're put in life or death situations, I think it's very interesting because for some people, it's like a light switch. It
Yeah.
almost like turns on their instinct to live and their,
Mhm.
self-preservation. And they start to realize that, okay, maybe I do want to do whatever it is. Maybe I do want to fix those relationships, or maybe I do want to strive to do more. And I think we saw that with Darby.
Absolutely. I think she wanted to reconcile and make amends and be more connected
Yeah.
with her family.
Yeah. Steven says being trapped or abducted seems to be a big qualifier for thrillers. Yeah. And in No Exit, of course, that is what we end up having. So Darby's at this rest stop and she sees this creepy van, right? Red flags, creepy van, always. Sees this
Always.
creepy van, and sorry to any of you van owners out there, but in these stories, it's always a creepy van. So she peeks into the van and she sees this child, this young girl who is locked up in a dog crate, basically, in the back of this van. And she can tell she's gotten sick on herself. She's, in dire straits. And when that scene first happened, Allison, who did you think, when she goes into the rest area and she sees the 4 other people there, who did you think initially was the abductor?
I thought it was the guy. She always referred to him as Rat Face.
Yeah.
I thought it was him for sure.
Yeah. I think we all did. But I will say, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys, we're going to start into some spoilers now. So if you have not read this book and you do want to read it, please, see your way out and maybe come back to it after you've read it. But yeah, I think, he's the obvious, person, right? Because he is very creepy. He seems very sketched out and, wary of everyone and everything in the rest stop. And he doesn't have great personal grooming habits. He seems very unkempt and
There was a whole
nasty.
scene in the van about him and his flatulence.
Oh, yikes. Oh, the fast food will get you guys. Okay, here's my little nutrition plug. he was eating a ton of fast food, and it was no bueno for his digestion, that's for sure. He was having some issues. Those scenes, those scenes particularly gave me a reaction. Like my face,
Yeah.
ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was gross. I think that's the reaction definitely we were supposed to have with that character. But when his brother Ashley is introduced, I was suspicious of him. Even when she confided in him, I just thought, he's too loud, he's too jovial. And I say this and I'm loud and jovial sometimes, I suppose, but I feel like when people are a little bit over the top, like they're trying to be too friendly and their jokes are too over the top and too frequent, like it feels manufactured to me. It always makes me take a step back and kind of like, okay, what's going on there? Like, what's the motivation behind that? So I was suspicious of him. So when it turned out
That got me. That really got me.
I was like, yes, this is a good book. Like, I loved that, even though I was a little bit like, I wasn't 100% sure, but I was a little suspicious. But I was pleased when that was how it shaked out. Now, did you suspect the other 2 at all? So Ed and I think Sandy.
No, I really no clue at all. I thought they were just, nice, average people that just got stuck there too. No clue they were in on this mess.
I hate to say this, but what stuck out to me with Sandy is that she was reading. So I was like, she's reading. you know, it can't be her. She can't be
Yeah,
involved. She's good people,
right.
you know?
Yeah, yeah,
She's reading a book. She's
yeah,
good.
yeah.
um, so yeah, I was not at all suspicious that there was any sort of connection there. So that was kind of wild. Now, did you buy the connection there and the whole plan, this whole kidnapping for ransom plan? Did you feel like that was adequately explained or thought out?
I think it was, but I feel like they were really bad at executing their plan.
Yes. Yes, for
Like
sure.
there were a lot of things that happened that kind of like with the storage unit, the not having the key, they kind of put a bump in their plan, and then they had other plans for Sandy that she didn't know about.
Yeah. And I didn't think about this at the time, but now that I'm looking back, I'm like, why do it in the middle of winter?
Yeah, yeah,
If you live in, well, I guess they were from California, right? The girl, wasn't she
yes,
from California? Okay, yeah. So I guess when they initially kidnapped her, it wouldn't have been an issue. But yeah, for a second there, I was like, why do it in winter? Because there's the possibility of this sort of thing happening. But I guess if they were not from the area, then they wouldn't necessarily know.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was very poorly executed. Um, and what did you make of the inclusion of Addison? Didn't she have Addison's disease?
Addison's disease. I felt like, wow, they're first of all, they're a bunch of idiots. They kidnap a child that requires medical attention,
Right.
and they're
Yeah.
not going to know how to take care of her. I guess they were just thinking money is all they were thinking.
Yeah. Very I guess that added kind of a time sensitive sort of thing to this kidnapping for me,
The
because
urgency.
yeah, that urgency, because I was thinking, okay, is this kid going to make it? I mean, by the time this storm breaks, she may be dead due to her illness, not from any violent means by the kidnappers. What did you think about the ending kind of sequence where, and it's multiple chapters where Ashley and Darby are kind of facing off, kind of going back and forth, and
I felt like he was the Terminator and he would just never die.
yeah,
I was
yeah,
like, oh
it
my God, he
did.
just keeps going. Like he's still trying to kill her. He's still trying to, make this plan happen. And everything's going to crap on his plan.
Yeah. His character was so uh, weird and interesting because, throughout this book, he's trying to kill Darby, but there were several instances where he has kind of like,
He's attracted to her.
yeah, he has some sort of affection
Yeah.
for her. And he talks about, like, I wish we had met under different circumstances and you could be my girlfriend. Do you think that kind of played into the fact that he doesn't kill her outright a couple of times when he probably had the opportunity to?
Yeah, I do think he's holding back because deep down, maybe he does have a conscience.
Yeah.
And I do think the way he was raised had a lot to do with how he may have turned out. Well, how he turned out.
Yeah. He definitely liked the game, the back and forth with Darby. I mean, he
Oh
kind
yeah.
of saw her as like a worthy adversary, I suppose.
Yeah, when she unlocked that van door with the shoelace, he was like, I think he was totally turned on and attracted to her by that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Stephen has a really great question. So I think a big question for the reader is what has to happen before a person becomes involved and is willing to act to help another. And actually, when our book club met in real life, this is one of the things that we spent a lot of time talking about. And, you know, this is difficult. What do you think about this, Allison? What are your thoughts on that?
That's a tough situation. What would you do? And would you help this girl? Obviously, you would want to help her. I mean, most people would want to help her. And I don't know how I would have went about doing it, though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She unfortunately confided. Well, I guess there was no good person for her to confide in,
no.
because the only person who was kind of innocent of it all was Ed. But I'm sure Ed would have told Sandy what was going on. Like, I know he would have.
Because
So
he had no clue what Sandy was doing either.
no, he was just a likely excuse for her to be traveling at that time. But she unfortunately confides into Ashley, and doesn't know that he is indeed one of the kidnappers. Yeah, I feel like you don't know who you can trust in that circumstance, and I would like to think, and Allison knows me, so she's probably gonna laugh when I say this, I would like to think I'm a little more prepared than Darby.
Yeah.
Because I do, personal safety is something that I do think about, I do take seriously, and I do have things in place that would protect me in a given circumstance. So I do feel like I'm much better prepared than our main character. She had 1% battery on her phone, or like 9% when she entered the rest stop.
She was
Something
really
crazy.
not prepared at all.
Not prepared. She didn't have a charger. She didn't have, cold weather gear in the trunk of her vehicle. She didn't have, any of these things in place. So, very difficult situation. But one of our book club members talked about the fact that she had already done a sketch of the suspects. She had written down the license plate number. So, she could have just sat tight and waited for the storm to blow over, for them to be, rescued out of the rest stop, and she could alert the authorities then. I guess the problem with that is the sense of urgency, maybe, with the child's medical condition. But of course, she doesn't know anything about that at the time.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to say, but you're no help to anyone if you're putting yourself at risk.
Right.
And she's, I don't know, 19, 20. She's still a kid to me. And, I don't know. I think for her character arc, in the book, she kind of found a sense of purpose and found herself in trying to help this girl.
Yeah, I do. I feel like it made her have exactly a purpose.
Yeah.
I feel like she was, when we first met her, she's kind of lost and wandering and trying to figure out who she is, a typical art school student.
And, maybe because she was kind of lost herself, that made her a little bit less concerned with her own personal safety, so she was kind of like willing to put herself at risk. And like I said, I think she may have been depressed. I do think there was an element of that in the book. And so once her life was actually, in danger, I think she realized, no, I do want to live. I do want to stick around. Lady Jane, so good to see ya. No Exit is one of my favorite thrillers. Absolutely love this book, Jane. What was the thing you loved most about it? If you're still on, throw that in the comments for us. Be fun to add that. Yeah, I think No Exit was a perfect book club book because it was pretty short. It wasn't a very long book, and I think most of the folks in the book club read it in like 2-3 days. I think maybe one person read it in like one sitting. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, very, very good, very good horror / thriller. I don't really know what to classify it as. I think a little bit of both there for
Yeah,
sure.
I like the scene with the nail gun and her
Oh yeah,
finger stuck in the door. I was just like, oh, I could just feel that pain. Like while I was reading it, like, oh my gosh, how awful.
I think that scene was a little too much for Emma, because Emma was telling me the other day, she's like, yeah, I can't get that imagery out of my head. The guy with the nail
Yeah,
gun.
then he couldn't open his mouth.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, like yeah, that was grotesque.
All right. Steven says, could this story have worked if all the main characters' genders were reversed? I think yes, of course. Absolutely. Um, that would have been very interesting, though.
Yeah, for sure.
That would have been very interesting. And just to speak a little bit on the background that Allison was talking about with the characters Lars and Ashley, they had a creepy uncle who basically was involved in human trafficking. Like, he had a little cellar dungeon thing set up, and he was trafficking women. And so, they grew up in that environment. And so we get a little bit of a peek at their childhood. And so you see a lot of those markers, I think, that people look for in someone's childhood that point to homicidal tendencies. And we have that in the book. So I think they had tortured an animal, they were lighting fires, there were all these sort of markers in that. So yeah, I think that it could have easily been, women who were just as damaged and, homicidal as as these two characters. Um, yeah, it would have been interesting for sure. Jane said, I loved how action packed No Exit was. Every scene had great pacing and it made you want to keep reading. I also like the final reveal of why she was in the van. Yes. Yeah, the pacing, I think, was on point. The one thing that this is a weird thing. I'm gonna admit, this is a weird thing to notice or pay attention to in the book. The one thing that kept getting me was the coffee. I was like, gosh, that coffee's got to taste like just absolute garbage by now. They kept drinking this coffee from
Yeah,
the
they keep
coffee
going
stand.
back for more though.
They kept going back for more. I guess it's because I love coffee so much. I was just like, oh gosh, I can't imagine what that coffee tastes like right
We're
now.
coffee snobs.
Yes, yes, for sure. Jane said, made the whole story so much darker and somber. Where it was thrilling on the surface, that reveal made everything truly terrifying. Yeah. Yeah, that was, and I think too, you've got this character, Ashley, who on the surface, he is funny, entertaining, kind of cute. He's pretty charming, right? He's charming everybody in the room. And then when you really, start to peel away those layers, he's not even nice to his brother Lars, right? They have that whole red card situation, right, where he punishes Lars for doing, what he deems as stupid things or whatever. So start to see that, and I think, once she started really looking at him, she kind of noticed, okay, maybe he's not as like squeaky clean and cute as I thought he was. So yeah, very, very terrifying. All right, anything else you want to say about Exit, Allison, before we move on to the next one?
I think we're good. I think we covered a lot right there.
We did. I think we just covered it. Oh gosh, Steven said, did someone mention coffee? So, we've talked about this with Steven before, and Steven, he, He likes some pretty rough coffee. I'm gonna say it, but he's using it to stay awake, so you can't really fault him for that. I just, oof, yeah. He wants his from 7-Eleven, and it's been on the burner for at least 12 hours, I think. So pretty rough. Got to add extra creamer to that kind, Stephen. I just, oof. Jane said, I almost had a little doubt, though, through the book in my mind, but that ending made my intuition validated. Okay. You know, Jane, I will say you're usually on point when it comes to your predictions, your intuitions about books. So you're very good at kind of seeing what's around the corner, which I'm kind of hit or miss. I'm not great at that, but all right. The Lying Game, Ruth Ware. And I do go ahead.
I forgot to mention how much they changed a lot of the stuff from the book to the Hulu movie.
Yeah, tell us about the movie. Yeah, tell us about the movie.
So I read the beginning, and then I started the thing at the same time. I was like, let me just see how that both compare, the opening of the book versus the opening of the movie. Completely different. Changed Darby. Darby was a heroin addict in the movie, which I totally hated. They took away all the good stuff about her being the art school student. They had her in rehab because she had OD'd, and her family and her were estranged because of her drug addiction.
Yeah, I don't like that. That's not as interesting to me.
No. And then I know, like, Sandy in the book was the bus driver, and in the movie she was the maid.
I don't like it.
No, nope.
Like it.
I watched it. I was like, I hate this. The book is so much better.
Which usually is the case, but everyone's will right.
Can you say that one more? You're breaking up, Karen.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, I just said usually that is the case, that the book is better.
Absolutely.
But every once in a while they will do it right, but just not in this case. Not in this case. All right. Well, The Lying Game, you talked about this cover, and I will say, if I kind of move it around, you need the little glass, what's supposed to look like glass in the window. Yeah. So that is a really, really cool cover. So this book is based on a group of friends who meet at a boarding school in England, and they have this game called The Lying Game. What did you think about that game, Allison, and how the book was set up? Because basically each little chapter or section rules. So what did you think about that?
I think it was started out as a completely innocent game, and as we know, lying eventually is going to catch up with you, and it definitely caught up with them.
Yeah. Now, of all the characters in this book, our main character is Isa. I don't think she's married, right? It's a long-term boyfriend, maybe fiance, and they have a baby together.
Right. And sometimes she'll say my husband, and then she'll say, but he's not really my husband.
Okay. So we've got her. We've got Kate, who still lives fairly close to this boarding school out in what they call it the Reach, but I guess it's basically this swampy area, and she lives in this house that is quite literally sinking into the swamp. And her father was the art teacher at the school, and he was a pretty famous artist himself, and he went missing. Now, the other teachers from Thea, And was that it?
I think so.
Okay. Kate. So, Fatima, she has kind of, I guess, rededicated herself to Islam. So she's kind of experienced some changes, like drinking more and everything. We have they seem to be the wild one. I think she works at a casino and she seems to have some difficulties with alcohol and eating disorder, possibly. It's that kind of a mixture of which of those characters was your favorite?
Gosh, I don't particularly honestly, I didn't like any of I would not want any of them honestly as my friends.
Me either. I didn't particularly care for any of the characters. The one thing that can be said for them, though, the one thing that can be said for them is when one of them says, "I need you," they all come.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that though was because they're genuine like love and devotion to each other, or do you think it's because they were keeping the secret
I
together?
think it's because they were keeping the secret. I don't think that genuine like if I told you that I need you, you would genuinely come because we love each other and we're like really good friends. Whereas
Yeah.
I think they just showed up because they knew they didn't want their secret exposed.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this book was a little bit slow for me. Did you find that? Did you find the beginning, especially the beginning half was kind of slow? I was like, okay, all right, let's get on with it.
Yeah, it was definitely slow for me.
I almost got frustrated too with the setting of this book because every time Kate tells them, "Hey, I need you," because basically they've started to find evidence behind the secret. So they found her father's body, and you know, all of these girls when they were there with Kate in high school, they helped her cover this up. Okay, and the whole book we're trying to figure out, okay, did he kill himself and they just covered it up so she wouldn't have to go to a girls home or a foster situation, or did she kill him, or did her stepbrother Luke kill him? What exactly happened here? And every time she calls them and is like, "Oh, I need you to come out," here they go traipsing to this swampy area, and it's a very precarious situation to get there.
Yeah, like the car is like the taxi drops them off and can't even take them all the way to the house. They have to walk. Roll their luggage. First of all, I can't even imagine pushing a baby carriage, crying baby, all of this through the swamp, and
that was ridiculous to me. I was just like, why is this lady toting her child across this ramshackle bridge, basically like roll up her in pants and having to trudge through some swampy mud to get to this house? It just, I don't know, that to me, I was just like, okay, this is a little ridiculous. But I think it was probably supposed to be symbolic of the fact that they are all in a precarious position. They're walking a tightrope here because they're keeping these secrets, and the swamp is revealing these secrets. The tide is washing these things up, and their house of cards is quite literally sinking. And we see by the end of the book that the house Kate lives in, the electricity is out. it even the electrics have gone out. So yeah, that was weird to me.
Yeah, and it's like her friends knew that she would never leave that house either.
Yeah. Now, what did you think of that? Did you think that Kate just didn't want to leave because she was hiding secrets there? Or did you think she didn't want to leave that house because she loved her dad so much and that was kind of the last, bits of him?
I think it was because it was the last piece of him that she had to hold on to it. There was a lot of his artwork there in the house.
Yeah. We had another art connection.
Yeah, it's like every time I'm like, there's a lot of art stuff here. That's weird. Even the last book was art connection. I did not pick that knowing this either.
No, but what's funny is the other art person in the group picked No Exit. Megan.
Oh, that's
Megan
right.
picked No Exit. Yeah.
Yeah.
You artist. What are we going to do with you?
Great minds.
That's it.
I'm trying to remember, did they ever mention, I cannot remember, mention Kate's mother?
No.
Just the dad and then Luke's mother.
If they did, I cannot remember. I mean, I'm assuming she must have died.
Right.
Because they do not mention her. They do mention, of course, Luke's mother because she's a drug addict, and that's a big part of the story. I guess a big part of why Luke is the way he is. But yeah, I don't remember them going into any great detail about Kate. Were you suspicious of Kate? Did you think Kate was quite possibly a murderer?
I did for a while. I really did think she did something. Like, in that heated moment, because her father, I can't remember, she thought he was trying to send her to another school and he wasn't. He was trying to send Luke, I think, or vice versa, something.
Yeah.
It got a little confusing in that part.
Yeah. Now, what did you think of when Luke said, "I should have chosen you"? So basically, we know that Isa always kind of had these feelings for Luke, and the one time she tried to kiss him when they were teenagers, he kind of like ran off and was like, no. And so it was really awkward, but there was definitely some sort of connection there. And then when she comes back, he seems like really angry with Kate, and she can't figure out why. And she assumes, that maybe Kate is the one who killed her father, and Luke is upset about that because he was the only father that Luke had ever known.
Right.
And then we find out that Kate and Luke had this relationship that's semi, incestuous. I mean, even though they're not technically related, they were step siblings for a point for a period, and then Kate's father raised them in the same household as if they were brother and sister. So very odd, for sure. So we find out about that, and he says, "I should have chosen you." And then they almost hook up, but
they were close,
and then get there.
Yeah, Kate was at the top of the stairs watching.
What did you think about that? Did you think that he did have some sort of unrequited love for Isa, or do you think he was just saying, like, I would have saved myself a lot of trouble if I hadn't been so wrapped up in Kate? Because then, the dad would not have wanted to send Luke away. Basically he was trying to split up Luke and Kate because he thought that was an unnatural, unhealthy sort of connection. And so what did you make of that?
I think he did have some kind of feelings for her because he did figure out where she lived and sent her flowers and trying to make, say he's sorry for the way he acted.
Yeah. He's the one character. Yeah, he's the one character I can't quite figure out.
Yeah. And maybe he doesn't know who he is either.
Yeah. Because basically Kate cut him off, right? So, I mean, they haven't been together, since her father died because, spoiler, come to find out, it's Luke who killed the father. And, basically he did it for love of Kate. One thing I did find interesting about Luke's character is, Isla's husband suspects that her crazy behavior is because she's having an affair with this Luke person. So he does the background check, right? And he finds all of these, criminal offenses, and none of them are necessarily, over the top and violent. But I do think that sort of pattern of behavior suggests something because, many times when people have committed a violent crime and they've gotten away with it, you will see a spiral. You will see a spiral in their personal life. And a lot of times they turn to drugs or alcohol. And in this case, I think Luke had several alcohol-related offenses where, he was drunk and disorderly and that sort of thing. So when I saw that is the one thing that I pinpointed, was like, maybe he did something, because it did make me think, okay, he has a guilty conscience. And at first I thought, well, maybe it's a guilty conscience because of him and Kate, like because of them being together, and he thought that was wrong. I don't know, but that did stick out to me as, interesting.
Yeah. The whole relationship between the girls, the father and Luke, that was a weird dynamic because he was drawing them like without clothes, like, without their clothes and stuff. When I thought that was really strange.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can give the artist who's doing the drawings a little bit of license there. I don't think that extends to this character, because in this book he is an authority figure for these girls.
He's a teacher.
He is actually a teacher at their school. And so, just the fact that he's allowing his daughter and her friends to come back to his house every weekend and basically have free reign, I do think that you get into kind of boundary situations there where, they're sneaking out, right? They're sneaking out to come to his house on the weekend and do whatever they want. And, I mean, within reason, he didn't let them do anything too crazy, but, he's clouding the boundaries there. And, he previously had a drug addiction, right? Because he had the little quote in his office about, basically you're never cured of drug addiction, basically is what it was suggesting. And I don't think he was ever on drugs, during that time, but he was, like you said, drawing pictures of the girls, and he would draw them maybe without some of their clothes on. It didn't sound like anything too revealing, but like maybe from behind, they're sitting by the pond or something, and he drew like their backbones and stuff like that. Just creepy enough though to where I'm like, something is weird here. I don't like this. I get creepy vibes from it. And of course that played into what most people thought happened to him, because the day after he goes missing, these sketches show up on the headmaster's desk, and people assume, oh, he ran off. That's why he ran off, because the heat was on, right? He knew he was going to be in trouble.
Who gave the sketches to the school?
See,
I can't
was
remember.
it
Like, did they
Luke or
ever
was it
reveal
Kate?
that?
I don't know. That might be a loose end in this book, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna assume that it was either Luke or Kate. You know what? I think it's probably Kate because the way the note from her father was written, he was basically telling her to protect Luke, right? And
Yeah.
how's she going to do that? So she has to manufacture this thing. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think about the father? Do you think he was a genuinely good person, or do you think that, you know, with those sketches and stuff, do you think there was some sort of weird something going on there?
I do think he was a good person. He had a good heart, but I don't think he knew how to establish boundaries between being a parent and versus being a friend.
Yeah. And, you know, I think probably his previous drug addiction may have played into that. Because I've seen this before. You know, we come in contact with parents all the time. And I've seen this before where you have, you know, a parent who maybe has made some mistakes themselves in their past, and they have a hard time kind of coming down hard on their kids or punishing their kids or holding their kids to a certain level of accountability because, you know, sometimes kids will throw stuff like that back at you.
Yeah.
So I think that may have played a part in it. And I don't think that's fair because I think, you know, everybody makes mistakes. And obviously, you know, that could have been a great teaching moment for the kids. Like, hey, these are the things that happen if you don't have certain boundaries in place, and this is why, you know, I'm gonna make sure you follow these rules.
Yeah.
So Stephen says, do you think authors of these kinds of stories do research for the characters, behaviors, etc.? So what do they research? Interesting question. Of course, Stephen always comes up with best questions that have no answers to. I would say, yeah, I think sometimes they do. You know, I'm trying to think in this particular book what they could have done research on. You know, maybe some research on life in boarding schools, or maybe this author was actually at a boarding school. That, you know, that could have been. I don't know that a lot of thriller authors necessarily need to do research, and this one doesn't really lend itself to it too much, but as far as like forensics go and like criminal investigation, like I can see for sure that sort of research coming into play. And then, of course, if you're dealing with a character who has a mental illness, I do think that research into that is, you know, probably warranted and would make for a much more interesting, fleshed out character. Ariel, reading and whatnot, good to see you. I didn't read this, but I'd be into it. Yeah, this one was pretty good. I will say it's a pretty slow start. Pretty slow start for me, but it was interesting. It was something different. It was something different for sure. Which one of the two, Allison, did you like the best? No Exit or The Lying Game?
I do think I liked The Lying Game. I liked.
Really?
Yeah, I know, right?
I'm shocked. Shocked by this answer.
Yes, but you know why I think I like it was my refuge while I was staying with my parents.
You know what? Understood. Yes.
Yeah. I think the ending of the book, I think, is what got me, where you feel like, okay, maybe they've learned their lesson from all the lying, but I feel like they didn't, because at the end, he says, her husband, boyfriend says, I love you. And she says, I love you back. But then she turns around and says, I was lying.
See, this ending, we have another ambiguous ending, and I just talked about, I think, in one of my last live shows about how I do appreciate an ambiguous ending now. I do like it. See, when I read it, I thought she was saying um, that she was lying about everything being okay. Because let me find it. She says
Yeah.
something to the effect of everything's fine. Dad's meeting us at Avamore. I love you. It's a lie. I know that now. But for Freya, I can keep lying. And maybe one day I can make it true. See, I thought maybe she was lying about everything's fine. But when you told me, you're like, no, I think she's lying about I love you. I'm like, oh gosh, maybe she is lying about I love you. But I
Like,
think
I
that's the
think
point,
she's
is that we don't
pretending.
know. We don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't know. I feel like maybe she's just pretending so she could stay with him for the sake of Freya as well.
Yeah.
Because I could totally see where she was extremely frustrated and hurt by him throughout the book. That he believed she was having an affair. And
I felt bad for him though. Because
I did, because I'm like, dude, if you just tell him the truth, all your problems are going to go away.
It was so frustrating because what is he supposed to think? And I almost thought, like, how dare you be mad at him for assuming the worst? Because you are lying at every turn. Like, obviously your behavior, how secretive you're being, how distracted you are after this trip to see Kate, you're getting flowers from another man. What is he supposed to think?
Right. Pretty obvious.
I felt really bad for him.
Yeah, I did. I felt super bad for him.
Yeah. And for a moment there, I thought, they're finally just going to tell the truth. They're just going to tell the whole truth.
Yep. And they just kept it going.
And I thought for a minute that Fatima's new devotion to her religion, I thought that would have played a little bit more of a role in that decision at the end on whether to tell the truth, because it was basically much ado about nothing, because the whole story leading up to the end, they keep referencing, her new devotion to the religion, and she's not drinking alcohol, and she's wearing the hijab now, and she talks with Kate about forgiveness and whether God, could forgive them for some of the things that they've done. And so I really thought, I was like, I had a little bit of faith in Fatima. I did. I had a little bit of faith that she would kind of stand up and say, no, like, this is enough. We're going to tell the whole truth. Enough of this lying game. Like, we're not 16 anymore. Let's clean slate this thing.
The only one I had confidence in that maybe would do the right thing.
Yeah.
And I wondered, like, what her husband thought with her, like, leaving, because they had kids and stuff, that she left with him.
Yeah. Unreal.
Yeah.
Steven says, which story is more believable or has a better chance of really happening? Well, the chances of you getting stuck in a, blizzard at a rest stop with some strangers, and the fact that they're all involved in the kidnapping, I think that would be very unbelievable. Like, that's like a 1 in a trillion chance that's going to happen. But I do think that friends keep secrets, right? So I think, the lying game is probably much more believable. Maybe not the specifics of who killed who and the motivations, but I feel like, this is pretty common that friends, keep secrets for each other. They do some horrific thing. They try to keep it a secret. It never works out, right? Because somebody always talks, or somebody slips up, or evidence is uncovered, or however. And of course, that creates turmoil in these people's lives. We've seen it happen a lot in the news. Like, a lot of cold cases are are solved nowadays. So
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like The Lying Game is much more believable. What did you think? This kind of brings up one aspect of the book that we didn't talk about. The public perception of these girls, because they go to this boarding school, and the town that's near the boarding school, everybody in the town knows that these girls have a reputation for lying. The
Yeah.
the gossip queen of the town, she basically says, "You're liars, the whole lot of you," right?
Yeah.
What did you think about that dynamic, and about kind of the impact of this lying game on other people?
I definitely see that as happening, like, especially coming from a small town. I feel like everybody knows all your business all the time.
Yeah.
And I do think it made the town not willing to help them, and it kind of made them outsiders because they could not
Yeah.
be trusted.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked that element to it. And how, several of the scenes happened at that little dive bar in town, and how every time Kate walked in there, kind of heads would turn, and, I could feel that for her.
Yeah.
Like you
Like
said, we're
all
from a
eyes
small
are on
town.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. And everybody knows everybody. And, if someone that there's gossip about someone, or even just someone new in town, right, shows up, it's like, who is that? Like, everybody's
Yeah.
talking, so that those scenes were very believable for me. And yeah, I do feel like their reputation was deserved.
Yeah.
They
They earned that.
they
Yeah.
earned that, because I think, as kids, you do stupid stuff, and do things that probably weren't great, hurt somebody's feelings or whatever. But this, to them, was a consistent game. They kept
Yeah.
points. If you
Yeah.
could
They
make
kept points.
if you could make a stranger believe a lie, you got so many points. And if the lie was really outrageous, you got a certain number of points. If you got the same person to believe another lie, it was it went on and on, to where you couldn't take anything they said
Yeah.
seriously.
And then it turns out that Kate was lying to them as well. She was playing
Yeah.
her own lying game.
Which, that's a rule of the lying game, right? You don't
Never
lie to
lie
each other.
to each other.
Yeah. But that, honor among thieves, right?
Yeah.
That old expression, like, you're lying to everybody else. What makes you think that they're not going to lie to you?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, Allison, do you have any last thoughts about The Lying Game or No Exit?
I'm good. I'm just excited now to read the next book that's in our book club.
I know. The next one is She Started It. And I think I'm going to get that one on Kindle, because it's a little bit cheaper. I think that one, it's a new release, so I think it's only in hardback right now. So I'm going to try to get it on my Kindle here soon. But that one looked really good as well.
Yeah,
So
I'm
yeah,
gonna do
I'm
that on my
excited.
Kindle as well.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on my show again. And
Yes, absolutely. Anytime. Always a pleasure.
we will have to do it again. We'll do it again for She Started It, for sure. I feel like that one's going to be a good one to chat about. So
yes, let's do it.
all right, guys. Thanks to everyone who showed up in the chat, and we'll see you in the next one.